Before we get started, I have a quick favor. I've been self-funding the Finding Genius podcast for 5 years now. I've done over 3,000 episodes. And as you can see on YouTube, we're up over 1 million views on the channel, which is fantastic. The next thing I really want to push on is to get up to 10,000 subscribers. Because once we do, we'll be able to put a donate button and we'll be able to solicit donations to help keep the podcast running and to also get the Finding Genius Foundation moving along. We have a big project studying anxiety, depression, and PTSD and working on a product to help people overcome these problems because I've seen them explode recently after the last 2 years of the whole virus situation. So if you would, please subscribe to the podcast. That would help us tremendously. Give us a thumbs up and check in the description for Buy Me a Coffee. It's about $5. If you could buy me a coffee, I'd really appreciate it. It would help keep the channel going, and I love coffee. Thank you.
Forget frequently asked questions.
Common sense, common knowledge, or Google.
How about advice from a real genius? 95% of people in any profession are good enough to be qualified and licensed. 5%
go above and beyond.
They become very good at what they do, but only
0.1%
are real geniuses. Richard Jacobs has made it his life's mission to find them for you. He hunts down and interviews geniuses in every field: sleep science, cancer, stem cells, ketogenic diets, and more. Here come the geniuses. This is the Finding Genius Podcast
with Richard Jacobs.
Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Finding Genius podcast. My guest today is Gary Binkow. He's very, very, very good at least 3 different things. One is that he runs a regenerative farm where it looks like they grow avocado and coffee. Another is a former Academy Award nominated and Emmy winning producer. So he had a decades-long career in film and digital media. He produced over 50 films and helped build one of the world's largest digital agencies because they wanted to talk about sustainable farming and get the word out about it. He's also led global digital marketing for Dr. Walter Longo. Dr. Longo works on a fasting mimicking diet. He's very popular for that, very well regarded and well known. So I can't talk to Gary about all 3 things. I chose the regenerative farm. So welcome, Gary. Thanks for coming.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Rich. I'm honored to be in your select few, getting selected to be on the podcast. Although I would say my intelligence factor is probably in the bottom percentile, but I'm going to try to help answer any questions you have.
Yeah, no, the genius is in the doing, I think. But yeah, welcome. So tell me about the regenerative farming. When did the idea first hit you, and what's been your work like in it?
So I spent my whole life living in urban environments. I grew up in Detroit, Michigan. Then I moved to New York City to do my college career and brief career in business in New York. And then I moved to Los Angeles. So I've lived in all these big cities. And after having lived in Los Angeles for the last 25 years, my partner and I, happened upon this kind of broken down, dilapidated farm in Carpinteria, California on a weekend trip we were doing once. And we were like, hey, I'm in the movie business. And I saw this movie, The Biggest Little Farm. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
That was a great movie, actually. Yeah, that was really cool.
It's a fantastic documentary, and I was very inspired by it. Same story of kind of film and TV business folks who got out of LA to start a farm. And so I've always been kind of intrigued with the romanticism of just sort of being on the farm. I have no experience, never driven a tractor, don't know how to repair a water line, have never been out into the elements. And so we just dove in, bought this broken down farm. And for the last 3.5 years, we have been slowly and carefully trying to bring it back to life. And it's been quite an enlightening experience, but also a life-altering experience in terms of my perspective on life.
So were you involved directly with The Biggest Little Farm?
I wasn't involved in it. I just saw the film. I seen it a couple of times. I was inspired by it.
It was really inspiring. I thought it was amazing that each time they had a problem, let's say snails or slugs, they had, they got ducks in there to eat them. And then they had a problem with something else and something else came and ate that. So I thought it would never end.
Yeah, it's like biodynamic farming. Yeah, it all kind of works together in an amazing ecosystem.
I thought in the movie, I was like, man, when is this going to end? They're going to keep having more problems, but then it stopped and it got better. But it was amazing to see the transformation from the land when they first got there to how beautiful it became and all the things it produced. It was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I'm also a marketer, so I also marvel at the marketing genius they had to film their entire journey and put it out. And now, I mean, they have all kinds of products they make. It's called Apricot Lanes Farms. And, that movie catapulted them into a multi-million-dollar business. So I think it's pretty big stroke of genius.
That's cool. So how much do you know about regenerative farming? Like, I'm sure some people would say, all farming should be regenerative farming. I mean, can it be, or is it really is he going to remain like a minority percentage of all the farming that's done?
Wow. Why don't you start with the tough questions, Rich? I think what I've discovered, my limited knowledge, is that it's very hard to define what regenerative farming actually means. But at its core, it means that you're a no-till farm. So I have some neighbors that made another fantastic documentary called Common Ground. I recommend everybody to watch, which is, can you do big agriculture and use regenerative practices? And that really means, like, in our culture in the U.S., we started with sort of just big agriculture of turning crops over and planting the same crop season over season. And what happens is you deplete the soil. So, the Dust Bowl is one of the consequences that happen when they're just destroying the microbiome of the soil. And so I think regenerative farmers do not like to plant and replant the same crop, and they don't like to till or disc the soil. We had a slightly different approach to that, which is that we needed to disc the soil to actually breathe life into it. So our soil was so bad that we had to plant 2 cover crops, which are just a mixture of biomass of different, plants. And they grow for, 6 months or so. And then you cut them down and kind of till them or disc them back into the soil. So the nitrogen and nutrients go back into the soil. And we had to do that twice. It took over a year just to do that.
And it changed from prepared the ground to be able to take other fertilizers and other plants and be sustainable, or start it off. Was it?
Yeah, exactly.
It was necessary.
Yeah, I mean, I think you need there. There's no plant life, there's no worms, there's no insects in the soil. You have a problem, and if there's no nitrogen in the soil, you have a problem. So you're not going to be able to grow very much. And I don't know what the farmer before us did, but it was an organic farm, so I know they didn't spray pesticides, because we had that tested as well. Or I shouldn't say the outlawed pesticides. You are allowed to spray certain herbicides and pesticides when you're an organic farmer, which is kind of a contradiction people don't understand as well. But our soil came back to life after a year, and we decided to just keep up with the regenerative practices. And so we planted, the monocrop for us is avocado trees and many different varieties. And then we took some extra. We have a small farm, by the way. We're not big agriculture. We're a small 6.5 acre farm. So we're actually just experimenting. And so we also planted coffee, and we have a number of fruit trees from cherimoya, which is native to California. Not native to California. It's native in Central America, but it's mostly only grown in Central California now. And, lemon, oranges, passion fruit. We have a ton of passion fruit trees. And so we're just learning the process along the way and what it means to be regenerative.
So what are, when you talk about cover crops and rotating crops, I know that, I guess traditionally what agriculture does is they till everything, right? And then they let this mixture just sit there in the open air, or how do they keep the field from year to year so it doesn't totally fall apart, or they don't care?
I think they try to rotate. I mean, now what they're trying to do is having to rotate crops. But what they used to do is keep planting all the same thing. It's corn, it's cotton, it's wheat. And it's every time you do that and you're spraying it with all of these harsh insecticides, you're actually killing the soil. So eventually, after a few years, the soil's dead, and then they move on to another part of the farm. And then I don't know if they're trying to bring other soil back to life, but one way to do that is to bring other use it for other farm animals or other usage, and it'll take another couple of years to bring that area of soil back together. But because our business is centered on making money, right? And farmers need to make money. They can't, the yield in getting for organic produce and crops is not that much versus conventional. So there's not a lot of incentive to be organic or regenerative for that matter. But if you watch that movie Common Ground, you'll see a big guy in Wisconsin who actually just passed away, who actually figured it out and has shown other farmers how you can be profitable.
You're saying one guy had figured it out on a large scale, or no one figured it out?
He's figured it out, and he's been very profitable. You're right. It's Gabe Brown. So,
he passed away?
I think he passed away. He was diagnosed with ALS. By the way, they think is somewhat connected to, being exposed to herbicides and insecticides.
Oh, man. Yeah, I remember he spoke a lot to like ranchers. There's all kinds of people on regenerative farming, and his company managed like tens of thousands of hectares of land all over the world. They did consulting and everything.
Yeah, no, I think it was an inspiring story, and it just definitely shows the filmmakers show that you can find people and kind of support them by telling their stories and help hopefully other bigger farmers try to change their practices. But so that's kind of what our goal is with this small little farm, is that we don't have a lot, a large orchard, but we're wanting to kind of invite people to come. We have a wellness center. We're hosting farm talks. We're doing farm to table dinners. We're really trying to help educate people on how you can, even in the city. So I mentioned I grew up in an urban environment. I was never exposed to this. You just, you're used to going to this grocery store and buying food and turning the water on, and it just turns on and flushing the toilet and it goes somewhere. I don't have to think about it. But when you're out here and you realize you're kind of down to growing your own food and making sure the water turns on and making sure there's electricity. And I think anybody in any environment can learn how to grow, even if it's something like sprouts, which you can grow in a jar and live in a city like New York City and grow your own sprouts. When you eat food that you've actually grown, it tastes very different. So there's a spiritual and emotional connection to that. And I would really love more people to try and experience it in any way you can, even if it's in a small garden or you're growing small amounts of food. I think it's pretty amazing.
I think my daughter planted pumpkins and they grew, and then she harvested them and made pumpkin cheesecake, and it was freaking amazing.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it hasn't happened again, but when she did, it was the best I ever had. It was so cool.
Yeah, I think that's like Alice Waters was always a big proponent of educating young people on the benefits of growing food. I just didn't grow up. I grew up in the 70s and didn't get exposed to that at all. I grew up in the processed food generation, which we're now discovering is actually killing us, right? With, space food sticks and Swanson's frozen dinners. And, this is just not conducive for long-term health. So you talk about Walter Longo, who's a gerontologist focused on health span. It's very hard to be healthy for a long period of time when you're eating very unhealthy foods that are highly processed. So the more kids can learn that they can grow food and get excited about it, it's really amazing. It's the only way we're going to change our healthcare system as well.
Yeah, because otherwise, I'm sure a lot of people don't even know where food comes from. They go to the grocery store or fast store. Maybe they never do. They just go to fast food places and they're even further removed from real food. So yeah, it's a problem. I understand. I remember I visited my friend in Seattle, and you walk around, there's blackberry bushes, and we ate some, and they were probably like a third of the size that you might get in the store, from Driscoll's. But man, they tasted amazing. Like all these flavors, and I never knew that blackberries had. And then the ones in the store, like they just taste like nothing. And the non-organic ones taste like chemicals, and the organic ones just taste like water. So
I think it's funny you mentioned that, because I literally just yesterday was picking wild blackberries on our farm that are just growing everywhere. And this is the season. You go through and they're actually bigger than the ones you get from the grocery store and Driscoll's. But they've never been sprayed. Never been fertilized. And I think what happens is that this is also the problem with our culture and business, around food, is that if you're a grower, you have to nuke the food before it leaves your farm so that you don't get sued. You don't want someone getting sick. So they literally bleach the bleach wash the fruit and vegetables so that, there's no harmful bacteria, or they don't want to be responsible for people getting sick. And I think when you do that, you're kind of taking away all the taste profile and the nutrient benefits of the fruit and vegetables. So it's different. It definitely tastes different when you're pulling it off the vine and it's popping it in your mouth.
Oh yeah, definitely. How far along are you in growing the avocados and the coffee? Have you been doing this for multiple years, and have you had harvests?
Well, we started 3.5 years ago, and the trees, when you plant them, I told you we spent a year just rehabilitating the soil. So they've been in the ground about 2 years, but the trees themselves are 3 years because they spend a year at the nursery, and it takes 3 to 5 years to bear fruit. So all of them right now, they're still babies. They all have little tiny avocados on them. And so we think we'll have our first harvest in fall this year, but it'll be very small, but it takes every year it gets better and better. So I think by next year we'll have a full harvest, and in year 5 we'll have a great harvest. So the good news is they're thriving, and we live in kind of a weird mountain climate where it's foggy and overcast and cold, and then it gets really hot. So they take a lot of care to make sure. And then we have, like in that movie, we have, enemies we need to take care of. We have like ground gophers that are trying to eat the bottom roots of the tree, and we have all kinds of deer that come through there that are trying to eat the leaves that can kill the trees, and so we're constantly battling all of that.
I've also I've interviewed a bunch of people that work in what I want to call produce, I guess agriculture, horticulture, viticulture, whatever you want to call it, culture. But I asked them, for instance, let's say you have an apple tree and it's now bearing fruit, and it's how long will that happen? Oh, let's say 15 years. So what's it like if you're eating the first year apples and they're being sprayed with pesticides versus like the 15th year? How are they different? Like years and years of that stuff building up, and just the answer I got was no difference. It's the same. I can't believe that that's the case, and I just wonder what happens to people again after you're eating a peach. You don't know how many times it's been sprayed, or the place where it's growing has been sprayed. Is it a first year peach or a 15th year peach? And again, what happens to people that are eating these? I mean, how different is the nutrition profile? How different is what you're eating?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. And so I struggle with this because most people that I talk to are like, well, we're all going to die sometime. And they don't really know the value of how harmful those sprays can be to your health. And until they get sick, or until you get the call, which I got myself, I had a wake-up call about 10 years ago and found out I had a sickness and a blood disorder that was all environmentally acquired illness. So it's something, cancer comes, they think cancers are responsible for, your genetics are responsible for 5 to maybe 13% of cancers. The rest are all environmentally acquired. So when I eat fruit, I'm always thinking like, what was it, even organic fruit? Like, because I know organic farmers are spraying their fruit too, right? And most people I talk to don't care. They're like, I'll deal with it when I deal with it. And then until you see someone who's really sick or had that wake-up call, that's when you go, oh, I want to make sure I'm eating clean fruit and vegetables that haven't been sprayed. And I think that's a problem we have to educate people on, which is products like Roundup, which is now glyphosate, which has over $3 or $4 billion worth of lawsuits they've already paid out, that is a known carcinogen, is still readily sprayed everywhere. And in fact, they just passed a law this year, which is 2025, that will allow these chemical companies, that will shield them from these personal injury lawsuits from their chemicals, which I have no idea why would we want to protect them, except for we're trying to protect big business. But at the same time, all of the people that are exposed to these chemicals are unable to seek damages anymore, or the very limited areas of seeking damages. So I really hope we can help educate people more about trying to be mindful of what's on the fruit and vegetables you're eating, and at least washing and cleaning them the best you can, which is really simple to do. Just putting it in water and with some baking soda, or you can spray it with some hypochlorous acid, which is a non-harmful free chlorine, or just even rinsing and washing it with dish soap and mild soap with not much of that, and letting it dry, I think is going to really help lower the toxic load that you're exposed to.
Yeah, definitely. What do you do when you go out to eat with people and you want to eat healthy and they don't seem to be aware of it, or you're asking questions to the waiter, how is this made, et cetera, blah, blah. Maybe the people at the table, you feel like they're like judging you, like, come on, man, just eat, stop this, Is there a lot of social pressure when you try to eat well and you try to eat whole foods from being around people? Is it difficult?
Well, I think it's changing. It's become much more like through social media, people are trying to expose seed oils and, and kind of asking restaurants to change how they're using seed oil. So you see a lot of restaurants actually embracing that because it's good marketing for them to embrace, hey, we don't cook with seed oils anymore. We're cooking in beef tallow. We're making French fries with beef tallow. So it's becoming a little bit more acceptable. My personal philosophy is like, I don't evangelize when I go out to eat to people. I don't, my brain, when I look at the menu and I look at all the produce and the products on the menu, my brain starts going on, that's a 9 in terms of hazard. That's a 7, that's a 3, that's a 2. So I'm doing all this calculus when I'm eating. And my partner, she's also gluten intolerant. So she's looking in, gluten exposures, and we do our own calculus, but I also don't sweat it. It's the hard part about the wellness business is that fear mongering is rampant and it gets people's attention and people become paralyzed. Then they have food, kind of eating disorders. And I don't think you need to be 0% non-toxic, exposure for 100% non-toxic, 0% exposure. I think you just kind of play the averages. If you can just reduce 20% your exposures, you're going to be much healthier. So I don't sweat it when I go out to a restaurant, or, occasionally I'm going to eat something, and I'm not militant about it either. So, and I don't try to convince other people.
Well, that's good, because you're right. If you try to be really careful, it might be impossible to go out to eat, or very difficult, or awkward, or just to eat with family, even if, let's say you have a husband or a wife that cooks, and, they feel like, oh, it's fine. And then other people in the family want to eat differently, and that could be strife there, I guess.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think this movement is changing mainly because of moms. When you have children, and you have this, incredible stress and responsibility to keep your kids safe. It's very different than when I grew up, where, parents just, weren't thinking about health. I mean, yeah, exercise, get outside and play and do all that stuff, but they weren't thinking about the food as being a potential toxin or hazard to what we're exposing our children to. So I think moms are changing perspectives on this, and I think they're trying to provide healthier food and products for their kids. So I think that's going to change the world. This generation that's growing up now is going to have a much different experience than our generation did.
So what role are you playing within the natural food world? You're now about to produce the coffee and avocados, but what else have you been doing? Consulting, or what else?
No, I mean, I'm like the average Joe, and I'm learning. So I am filming a lot of the knowledge that I'm experiencing. We have a social media account called Root to Rise Farms, with plural farms, and the number 2, Root to Rise Farms. So we post a lot of videos up there. I'm committed to education. I don't think we're ever going to, the amount of money we're going to earn from our crops is not going to be enough to really pay for the cost of the crops, unfortunately. So we built a wellness kind of focused center on our farm. So there's Airbnb stays, there's farm talks, there are events on the farm. And that's sort of how we're going to have to subsidize trying to be an organic farmer, which is really sad because that's just the state of the affairs. But I'm also in California, where real estate and dirt is very expensive. So I'm having to combat that and supplement it with different ways to approach agricultural farming and the business economics of that.
Yeah, California is supposed to be, like, I guess the most healthiest, mindest place in the U.S. it seems like. But what do you see how is people's perceptions around organic in California changing maybe over the past few years? Is it becoming even more of an interest to people, or has it kind of died down? Like, what do you see amongst friends and associates?
I don't think it's as big as people think it is. I think basically those who are super committed know, like, the dirty dozen, and so you try to buy those organic, like the strawberries and cherries and almonds, and they're sort of heavily sprayed crops. I try to be organic. Everything else, even like avocados, because they have a seed cover, they're considered not in the super high exposure level for pesticides. But now that I have my hands dirty and I'm in the field and I can see my neighbors who are conventional, and that insecticide, to your point, goes into the dirt and it comes up through the roots of the plant. So it's not just about what's sprayed on the surface of the fruit and vegetables. So I try to be organic, but I'm not seeing people obsess over being organic unless it's part of those dirty dozen fruits and vegetables.
Okay. Are there any particular crops that you think really need a kick in the butt and need to be moved over to more organic that are not? I guess the dirty dozen would be a great starting point, but
the most nutrient dense fruits and vegetables for me need to absolutely be pushing more organic. So blueberries and strawberries, and we mentioned blackberries, any berries, all berries are so good for your health. So it would be really good if you're going to eat more of them to kind of lower the toxic burden that you get from them. And then, I tend to eat a lot of apples. Apples are a great way to get fiber. Fiber is really important for our diets. I don't think any of us are getting enough fiber. And apples are another crop that's heavily sprayed, and it's hard to keep them from getting, kind of exposed to insects and other fungus and diseases. So they have to spray them. But I want us to figure out a better way to grow without those, interventions. And, I think melons and things that have kind of rinds and covers, I think, are probably safer. So I wouldn't wouldn't push those.
Okay. So what future plans do you have in the regenerative farming world? Just getting the word out more, or what do you want to do? How do you want to affect things?
Yeah, I think as you mentioned at the top of the podcast, we're involved in a lot of different businesses. And so for us, the farm is a way to educate people about how to eat healthier and increase health span. Health span, as you probably know, is the number of healthy years we have, not our lifespan, which you see all these biohackers focused on living to 120. And, I'm okay to live to 100, but I want to have 100 healthy years and I want to be vibrant. I don't want to spend my last 20 years in a wheelchair or in a hospital or under assisted care. So I'm working really hard with what we do on the farm to what we educate people on. We have a wellness website called the Swell Score, which has products that have been vetted and tested and evaluated by a medical review team. We are like Valter Longo is committed to sort of increasing the healthy years you have and optimizing for that. And so clean water, clean, home environment, what you're exposed to when you sleep at night in terms of is your mattress on pillows, are they making you sick? Are there allergens in your house making you sick? Is there mold in your house making you sick? These environmental exposures can have a much more, impact on your health than what certain foods that you're eating. So we're kind of focused on all of them in everything that we do. And the farm is just a place for us to gather people and educate. So that's our mission.
Okay. Well, where can people find out more about your efforts? What's a good central place?
So the farm has an Instagram page. It's called Root to Rise, ROOT, the number 2, Rise, RISE, Farms, FARMS. And the wellness business has a website called the swellscore.com, like the science of wellness. We're committed to finding the best products for people that can help them with their own health goals. The swellscore.com. And then we also have an Instagram page called the Swell Score.
Oh, what does Swell, what's the acronym mean?
So it's kind of a portmanteau for the science of wellness. And I grew up surfing, so I kind of love the idea of a giant swell and kind of create a wave of change. So it's got a kind of double entendre, but the science and wellness put together, that's kind of where we're at. We look for evidence-based protocols and try to get rid of the BS in wellness. There's a lot of charlatans, a lot of snake oil, a lot of you got to take this, especially now with like TikTok and social media and social commerce. I see people promoting products that have no scientific evidence to support their usage. And so we're trying to sift through that and just find products that we think can add value or have evidence to support it.
Okay. Well, very good. So Root to Rise for people that want to know more. So thank you so much for coming on, Gary. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Rich. I appreciate it.
If you like this podcast, please click the link in the description to subscribe and review us on iTunes.
You've been listening to the Finding Genius podcast with Richard Jacobs. If you like what you hear, be sure to review and subscribe to the Finding Genius podcast on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. And want to be smarter than everybody else? Become a premium member at findinggeniuspodcast.com. This podcast is for information only. No advice of any kind is being given. Any action you take or don't take as a result of listening is your sole responsibility. Consult professionals when advice is needed.